Welcome back to the news today. This is One on One. A set of controversial bills are in the center of Israeli politics recently, from recognizing Israel as a Jewish state to the banning of prisoner releases. The Herzliya conference underway draws together participants from the highest levels of government, business, and academia around the world. At the conference, I sat down with former Israeli Justice Minister Amnon Rubinstein for a one-on-one interview on some of these hot topics. Professor Amnon Rubinstein, thank you very much for giving us this interview.
Thank you for inviting me.
You know, one of the biggest issues that are now being dealt with here in Israel is the new nationality law that is trying to promote the Jewish state. And maybe some people will say to protect the Jewish state. And my question to you, as someone who knows exactly what the law is about, is it not hurting the democratic state?
Well, I'm absolutely against this law. I wrote against it. I wrote a Prime Minister letter explaining why I'm against it. I spoke on radio and television. Israel is defined now in the former basic law, which I managed to pass in the Knesset, the Liberty and Dignity Law, on Israel being Jewish and democratic, equally. The two things are equal. It's both democratic and Jewish. If it's Jewish and non-democratic, it's not part of the value of the State of Israel. Anybody who tries to change this is doing a great disservice to the country and to the Jewish people. So I'm absolutely against this. And I hope it will not pass. I keep my fingers crossed, you see.
That it will not pass. Before I will ask you, what are the chances that in the current government it will pass? You know, the Israeli Arabs, the minority here in Israel, will tell you that Jewish and democratic, it's not going together. It cannot go hand in hand, because you cannot be Jewish and democratic at the same time. This argument is something that you can understand or accept, or?
I cannot accept it, because if it's Jewish and non-democratic, then I don't accept it. For instance, I accept the idea that the main Jewish idea is that man was created in God's image. And from here stems the idea that all men and women are equal. This is, for me, a Jewish idea. The other Jewish idea is that which was hateful to us as a minority in the diaspora. We should stay away from it when we are a majority in our country. These are two Jewish principles which I accept. I don't accept anything which distinguishes legally between Jew and non-Jew. And this is why in the phrase Jewish and democratic, the most important one is the and, A-N-D, that says that if the two values are
not combined together,
they cannot be acceptable to each other, they are gone. So the value of the state is both Jewish and democratic. And the Supreme Court, in about 50 decisions, explained this. It's both things. They have to be compatible with each other. They cannot contradict each other. Now the government wants to change all these decisions to the Supreme Court, and all the statement of Israel as a Jewish democratic country. I hope they fail. I pray to God that they fail.
Help me understand, because maybe I'm a little bit naive and maybe I'm a little bit confused about what is going on lately in Israel. The new prisoners' law that just passed, or they're trying to pass it, something that Benjamin Netanyahu was voting and promoting years ago, and understands that in order to do some kind of a negotiation, you need to release prisoners from prison. Now, they're going against it, this current government, with the nationality law, with the extremist right getting, let's say, stronger in the current government. Can these laws, you're crossing your hands and you're crossing your fingers, but can these laws pass and really have a big danger to the state of Israel?
I make a distinction between these two laws, because the prisoner law is, I'm also against it, but it's a controversial law. Some people, not from the right, support it. It's a controversial issue, and America has the same practice of somebody sentenced to life without parole, without the issue of prisoner exchange. But the nationality law is something else. It wants to change the status which we inserted in the basic law, which is a constitutional law, on Jewish and democratic. This is a catastrophe. And this, I hope, will not pass. A lot depends on Mr. Lapid, because without him it cannot pass. It can pass without him in the government, because the right wing has a majority in the government. But if he says that this is an existential issue, that he won't sit in the government which passes this law, then it will not pass. The other thing is, if it passes with an equality clause, that all Israelis are equal, this is something else. Then it says, in other words, that Israel is Jewish and democratic in another form. But I doubt it whether they'll accept the equality clause. So presently, I'm against this law. It's not necessary. It's promoted by the extreme right wing. The Labour Party is against it. Yesh Atid, Yair Lapid's party, is against it. And it will further isolate Israel and will antagonize the Israeli Arabs.
So maybe I will try to make your life a little bit more complicated, and I will ask you, is every single citizen in Israel is equal by law?
Equal in political rights.
In front of the law?
Is equal in political rights and in statutory rights, not equal economically and not equal culturally.
So the claim that minorities are in Israel are saying that if an Ethiopian will come, if an Arab will come to a court, and let's say an Ashkenazi will come to a court, they will do the same crime, they will get the same sentence in Israel?
Well, there's a claim that the Arabs get stricter sentences, but I want to remind you that an Arab judge sent an Israeli former president to jail. This is no small accomplishment for Israel. But I say, I don't want to be blind to the truth. The truth is that the Arabs are both exempt from army duty and unequal economically and in many cultural areas, but politically and statutorily when it comes to national security, when it comes to social security, when it comes to health security, they are equal.
I want to talk about a book that you just translated to English, The Black Sun.
Black Sun.
And it tells the story of the second Intifada.
Yeah.
From a romantic point of view, from...
Well, I would say from a demented point of view.
From a demented point of view.
Because the hero is he is demented, and the reader doesn't know until the end whether this is real dementia or whether he's right. He, in his dementia, thinks that his best friend, who was killed in one of the terrorist attacks, is still alive, and he hunts for him. And until the very end, you don't know whether this is dementia or whether this is the truth.
How many times do you wish that it will be fiction? When it will be fiction?
Well, there's an element there. His daughter is studying in New York. She's studying about dementia, and she writes to her mother that her father could come out of this dementia, but we as a nation will never come out of this. So there's a note of pessimism here. But I'm an optimist by nature. I was born that way. I think that given goodwill on both sides, we can advance, because we cause each other tremendous harm. Tremendous harm.
Do you really believe that? You've been a very close friend to the late Prime Minister Rabin.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a lot of people said that after his passing away, after his murder, the peace process was murdered as well. Are you still optimistic?
Yeah, I don't think the peace process is an inevitable outcome, because it serves both Palestinians and Israelis. It serves both Jews and Arabs, and the Middle East could prosper and become a treasure for all its people. So, but I'm not sure when it will come. I don't believe that I'll see it. I hope that my children will see it.
Professor Amnon Rubinstein, thank you very much for this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that was it for our evening edition. Thank you very much for joining us. Have a great night.